Every year around Halloween, we are treated to an outpouring of what could only be described as scare literature, telling us about how the holiday is satanic and evil and should not be celebrated by Christians. These opinions are backed up by some rather unusual and very frightening fantasies masquerading as historical facts. The following videos are not intended to address whether or not Satan exists, nor to show that witches are nice granola-eating vegetarians and tree huggers who wouldn't harm a fly. Nor is it an attack on fundamentalist Christians, but rather a discussion concerning some of the so-called facts offered in some anti-Halloween publications.
Michele Blake wrote a very popular article entitled 10 Reasons I Kissed Halloween Goodbye. It was responded to by Yuri Stasiak and Derek Powlett. In this series we will go over each reason Blake gave.
5. We play how we practice. This is one of my husband's favorite sayings. He is usually referring to table manners with our sons. If you use a knife and fork correctly at the kitchen table, then you won't have any problems when it counts. When you're at a nice restaurant with your employer, or meeting your future wife's parents for the first time. How we practice spills over into real life. The same applies to Halloween. We think we can entertain the macabre, erect gravestones in our front yards, and prop dead bodies on our front porches. Oh, but they're not real, we demur. Then we are appalled when a 17-year-old has a fascination with dead bodies and decides to act on his morbid desires. Do we really have any right to be shocked or even surprised when some among us decide to act out in real life the fascination with evil we insist on holding dear? We can't have it both ways.
Blake argues that Halloween prepares one to act out strangely. She does not base this on any relevant psychological data, but simply makes the assumption. While this is fine for writing down in one's diary, but this simply cannot do in the publication of a real article. Psychologists say the truth is exactly the opposite. That our Halloween costumes and habits are not something that comes into our life and changes us, but actually comes from within and reveals our inner self. It seems odd to attack the instrument of expressing what is within, rather than the evil that is within. Jesus agrees with the psychologists, or is it the other way around? In saying that things from the outside do not defile us and make us evil. On the other hand, it is what is on the inside that is the root of evil. Jesus said that
what goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them.
Blake then introduces an logical fallacy called an appeal to consequences, wherein she presents a totally fictitious outcome of Halloween and uses that fictitious prediction to argue Halloween is wrong. She uses a fictitious story she made it up, out of the blue, and thinks that is enough to prove her point. There is absolutely no psychological and psychiatric evidence that Halloween causes necrophilia. I will gladly change my mind when legitimate evidence is presented. On the other hand, there is a great deal of evidence that Halloween does not make one obsessive. For example, there are a great number of eminent pastors and church leaders who celebrated Halloween in their childhoods, and indeed still do. However, they are not necrophiliacs. Let me stress this, there is more real evidence that children who celebrated Halloween in their childhood became pastors than there is for Blake's unwarranted speculation. If dressing up in costumes allows us to act out and assume violent identities, does this not make any church play the vehicle towards extreme violence? According to Blake's logics, it certainly seems that way. For example, what if a little boy is dressed up as an angel? Well, in the Bible, angels are agents of God's wrath, often smiting and destroying cities and armies. Or what if a boy is dressed as David? Does he automatically want others to say of him what was said of David in the Bible?
As they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands.
Now Blake comes about full circle, and again bemoans the horrific and gory side of Halloween. Previously she had stated that the reason Halloween is wicked is because Satan makes it so attractive in order to lure in Christians. Now she argues that it is wicked, because it is completely unattractive with its macabre, erect gravestones, dead bodies. Well, which one is it? It can't be both. Blake needs to find a consistent position, not flip-flop as it suits her.
If we choose to be entertained by evil, we should be prepared for the time when it becomes reality.
Time and time again Blake uses circular arguments to prove Halloween is evil, because it is evil, and therefore we know it's evil. Halloween has been around historically for over 1,300 years. Did ghosts and demons destroy the world? What is this evil reality she is speaking of? The world is far less superstitious than it has ever been. A far bigger danger is complete naturalism and secularism, not the reality of superstition and witchcraft.
For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this work, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12.
She includes yet another Bible verse. Is this getting old or what? That is out of context regarding Halloween. This time it's Ephesians 6:12, which talks about spiritual battle against Satan. Of course Blake sees this to be against Halloween, just because she assumes Halloween is really Satan, because he isn't like an angel of light or anything. She isn't bothered by the fact that a biblical definition of the doctrines of demons in no way matches her definition.
Or to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies. Such things promote controversial speculations rather than advancing God's work, which is by faith. The goal of this command is love, which comes from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Some have departed from these and have turned to meaningless talk.
Let us not drop our guard for a moment, or even camp out one night a year for fun on the side of the enemy.
She concludes this by equivocating Halloween festivities as camping out one night a year for fun on the side of the enemy. Again, there isn't a shred of proof to back up her shame-filled statement. She manages to cast guilt upon hundreds of millions of wise, caring, historically acute Christians who use Halloween to share neighborly love. All based on her morally righteous, opinionated speculation. Blake propagates the myth that if children dress up and are exposed to blood and dead bodies once a year, they are more likely to become violent murderers or something. This has been disproved through studies involving things like video games and movies. Furthermore, if she were consistent, she'd have to remove all violence from the Bible, or have her children not read it, not to mention cartoons like Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, or movies, video games, play wrestling, snowball fights, and the list goes on. Who draws the line? Legalists will say I do. And they'll spell out their own little crusade, and be inconsistent in other areas of life.